This show is part of the Proclaim Podcast Network, thoughtfully crafted, faithfully told stories that proclaim His name. More at proclaim.fm.
Hey guys, Paul Hastings here with a message that I'm recording on October 15th, 2025. And I don't know if you know that much about how our show gets created, but toward the end of every year, we ask our listeners to help us continue our work for the following year. Yes, we sell ads all year long, and we also have our monthly partners who give to us regularly through their monthly donations, for which we are incredibly grateful. The podcast would not exist without their efforts. But the math always works out that we also rely on the generosity of our listeners at the end of the year as well. How much we can fundraise at the end of the year right now sets the tone for what we can do the following year. And I'll be honest, fundraising is kind of a distraction, right? We're a very small team and I'm the only full-time person. So I'm the only one who raises money so that we can pay the team, which means that if I'm busy fundraising, well, that's time when I'm not creating new episodes. Which brings us to this. Thanks to your generosity at the end of last year, we were able to spread the mission of Compelled so much further than we've ever done before. And really, that was in 4 ways. First, through the launch of our nationwide radio program. In partnership with American Family Radio, Compelled is now heard every single Sunday afternoon by 500,000 listeners spread across 170 stations in 34 states. That alone has increased our reach and impact by 24x compared to last year, which said another way, that's 2,400% growth in 1 year, which is just phenomenal. The second way we increased our impact is through 12 brand new episodes, and hopefully we'll have a few more that we'll release before the end of the year. I hope that you found those stories to be just as moving as we did, dealing with topics like Jehovah's Witness, infidelity, cults, suicide, addiction, intellectual agnosticism, gang activity, fatherhood, and most recently, Hurricane Katrina. A third way we've impacted lives is through re-releasing over 20 remastered episodes, with another 10 to 12 on the way before the end of the year. Several of these remastered episodes include brand new updates from our guests, bringing us up to speed on their lives since they first appeared on Compelled years ago. And the fourth way we've grown our reach this year is through the launch of our very first book of Compelled testimonies, which as of right now has sold over 18,000 copies. But of course, the numbers don't matter as much as the lives that we're touching and shaping. Every week, we receive messages from people who've been encouraged by the testimonies on Compelled. In fact, here's just one of those messages that we received from an anonymous listener this summer. She writes, I came across Compelled after feeling convicted by the Holy Spirit to get away from consuming secular media. So I searched for Christian podcasts and listened to an episode of Compelled and enjoyed it. I'd started building a habit of Bible plans and such. It was awkward and inconsistent as a newly convicted Christian and mom of young kids with full-time work. I felt God calling me to Him, but wasn't sure how to find a rhythm. Then life continued. Months passed. I was allowing myself to get pulled back into TV shows and things that I knew the Lord didn't want for me. As the Holy Spirit opened my eyes, I could see how all of these shows were using the Lord's name disrespectfully, romanticizing sin, mocking faith, and God's goodness. Just so many things that are against God's ultimate desire for our hearts and minds. Then one day, as I was about to slip back and play a true crime show, which I know feeds my fear and my anxieties, I paused, finger hovering over the start button, and I sincerely looked up at the ceiling and said to God, I know this isn't great, but what am I supposed to do? Help me. And up popped a notification that a new Compelled episode was released. I hadn't seen any notifications like it since I listened to that one episode several months prior, but the Lord answered me and gave me a way back toward Him. I laughed, praised God, and started listening to Compelled. I cherish each testimony and share them with friends and family. The Lord has used these testimonies to call me to repent of past sins, humble myself to Him, and to inspire my hope for non-believing friends and family. And, frankly, I don't even know who wrote this. It just came as an anonymous comment on one of our episodes. But that was very encouraging for me and the team to receive. We know that God is using these stories to remind his people all across the world that he is living and active and is changing lives every single day and wants to change our lives too. None of what we do through Compelled would be possible without the generous financial support of our listeners like you. Last year, you helped us raise $60,000 to fund our work for 2025. And like I mentioned, with that, we were able to increase our impact by 24x. Well, thankfully, our expenses have not grown by 24x, but they have grown. In order to handle that additional work, we've brought on 2 more part-time team members, and the annual radio broadcast fees are significant. This year, we have 2 end-of-year goals. The first is to raise $80,000 by the end of the year. And again, for context, last year, you helped us raise $60,000. We just launched the fundraising campaign yesterday through our Compelled Insider email list. And so far, as of today, October 15th, we are 4% of the way there. We've already raised $3,400, which is so encouraging. Our second goal is to be joined by 300 monthly partners, and we already have 160 of those, so we're already halfway there. Will you prayerfully consider making a one-time gift or becoming a monthly partner? And will you come alongside us and bring these stories to life so that literally millions of people can hear them and know that God is at work today and that there is hope for the hopeless and help for the needy? To become a monthly partner or to make a one-time gift, just visit compelledpodcast.com/donate. Again, that's compelledpodcast.com/donate. And now, on to the show. Last time on Compelled.
They tested me for cystic fibrosis, and I was positive. This is a child disease. You do not get in adulthood. Most people, they'll not graduate high school, they'll not go to college, they'll not get married, they won't have kids, they won't live a normal life. Throughout my life, I felt like I had cystic fibrosis for a reason. Every summer in college, I went and worked at a youth camp. Amy was working at this place as well.
I was selected to go to a paratrooper school and learn how to jump out of airplanes. Thankfully, I had already committed to work at the camp.
Got married a year later in Marble Falls, Texas. We wanted really kids, but we knew that ultimately we couldn't have them, directly.
Josh and I got a phone call from a woman who we have never met who said, "Would you like to be the parents of my child?" That we would be able to raise a child is a miracle.
I'm Paul Hastings, and you're listening to Compelled, where we use gripping, immersive storytelling to bring to life Christian testimonies from the kingdom of God, told by the people compelled to live for Him. Last week, we heard the first part of Josh and Amy Glasscock's story. As a child, Josh was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease called cystic fibrosis, which has no cure and always leads to death for its victims. But unlike the doctor's dire predictions, Josh didn't die in his childhood, but instead attended college and even got married. We ended the first part of their story last week right as Josh and his wife Amy adopted their daughter Lily Rain. And if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, then I'd really encourage you to do that. It's episode number 38 of Compelled. Today is part 2 of Josh and Amy's journey as we hear how Josh's cystic fibrosis gradually gets worse and creates irreparable damage to his lungs. Soon, they will be confronted with life and death decisions, and only God will be able to carry them through the storms ahead. So gather round, lean in, and join us for another compelling story from the kingdom of God. All right, now just a quick reminder on the backstory. Josh's sickness, cystic fibrosis, is sometimes abbreviated as CF, and we'll use that term interchangeably. It's a lifelong genetic disease that causes your lungs and other organs to create too much mucus and fluid. The mucus is abnormally thick and sticky and eventually blocks critical tubes, ducts, and airways. Not only does this make it difficult to breathe, but it also increases your likelihood and frequency of catching infections, developing pneumonia, and permanently damaging your lungs. Over time, the damage to your lungs and other organs becomes permanent, and you'll eventually suffocate to death or die from other complications. And at the time that Josh was diagnosed as a child with cystic fibrosis, the majority of patients never survived beyond childhood. But as Josh grew older, some treatments were developed that could help minimize some of the symptoms, but only slightly delay the inevitable. There is no cure, and cystic fibrosis always results in premature death. While Josh and Amy were dating, they both lived a very active lifestyle. But after getting married, Josh's health began declining. Then it took a sharp turn for the worse shortly after adopting their daughter, Lily Ray.
2019 was the worst year ever for me, health-wise. It was also the darkest, like mentally, emotionally. I wouldn't say necessarily spiritually, but it was like the grimmest moment of my life. It was around May 2019. It was right after Easter, actually. Her family was down here visiting, and I woke up one night, and I literally just felt like this, almost like somebody sitting on my chest. And so I checked my heart rate, I checked everything, and like it wasn't going away. It was breathlessness, more than I've never had, really. And so, knowing that I've had a collapsed lung, knowing I've had other things, I was like, okay, we need to like go get this checked out. I was thinking, okay, maybe I have another collapsed lung. That's really what my first thought was. I have another collapsed lung. Let's go do the procedure, blah, 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 And so I go and I get checked out, and they don't find anything right off the bat. They do the x-ray, they do the stuff. My CO2 levels are high, my oxygen was lower, which is, once again, common because if you can't breathe enough oxygen, things like that. So they start testing me, but this thing's not going away. Like they're giving me some things to kind of calm me down. It's just not going away. And it just started progressing. It stayed constant where I could not breathe. And it was really starting to get to me, like mentally and everything, because like I had no level of relief. The only level of relief is when they'd give me stuff to like kind of sedate me.
Yeah.
And that can only last like a little bit, or painkillers. And it literally was progressing. They found that I had infections. It was really just escalating.
But you said it was a sensation of suffocation. Like
yes.
I'm breathing, but nothing's happening. And you called it fish out of water.
Yeah, I felt like a fish out of water. I felt like my mind was going because I felt like I could not breathe at all. Like it was getting worse and worse. And then it escalated so bad one day that they had to like really sedate me.
This is all at the Austin hospital that you're still at?
Hospital, Seton in Austin.
You had already for a couple of days been given morphine.
Yes.
And already there was some discussion about with CFers at this point, when you're feeling so breathless that nothing's helping you, only intense medication like morphine,
yes.
or there were some other ones that were, and that's not even helping your situation. No. It's helping your mind to calm down. Because if you're suffocating, your brain is freaking out because it's telling you to freak out because you're suffocating.
Yeah.
And it's just this cycle. So it's basically to convince your mind that nothing's happening, even though you're still suffocating. So already there had been discussion with like palliative care, in them saying, okay, well, if you're wanting to go palliative care, then we can help you and we can give you these medications. Yeah. But then the CF doctors are going, if you take those medications, you can't go transplant and you can't get better. Like those things will help you to die better, but they're not going to make you better.
An important concept to understand in this story is lung function. It's normally explained as a percentage of your breathing ability. A normal person like you or me could take a deep breath and be measured with a lung function of 100%. Patients with cystic fibrosis typically begin taking regular lung function tests at age 6 and continue to do so for the rest of their lives. And by the time a CF patient's lung function reaches around 30%, doctors began urging them to look into a lung transplant. But while modern medicine has made incredible advancements in surgery, lung transplants are still some of the most difficult and dangerous operations that exist. Unlike other transplants, such as kidney or liver transplants, where the patient can live for the rest of their life with their new donated organ, lung transplant recipients typically only live for a handful of more years, at which point they either die or can try to receive another lung transplant. But again, the surgery is incredibly dangerous, and even more so for a CF patient. According to the Mayo Clinic, only half of lung transplant recipients are still alive after 5 years. And once that transplant happens, there is no going back. It's an hourglass with a limited amount of sand slowly running out of time.
Literally what happened was all those morphine drugs, they decrease your lung function. Like I needed it to breathe, felt like I needed to breathe, but it was making me worse. It literally hit me so bad that they literally had to rush me to what they call IMC, which is like in between ICU and a regular room. It's like immediate, critical care type deal.
From my perspective, like when we were still in the room and he was having these moments where he's already breathless constantly, but then he would, let's say, cough, and that just made it worse because now he really doesn't have air. His lungs just exhaled all of that and he can't get it back in. And so his face is turning red. He can't talk to me and he's like snapping his fingers. He's, waving his hands. I'm freaking out because I have to interpret that and I don't know what to do. So at this moment that he's talking about, I believe it was May 2nd, I had to run out into the hallway and flag down, like scream at the nurses and the doctor to come in because I think all you did say was sedate me. I think you screamed, sedate me.
Something. I mean, I need something really bad.
And so from then they came in and immediately gave you something through your IV. I think he gave you 2 shots of something to like immediately calm him down because he was like about to lose it. And then that's when they were rushing you to the IMCU. And that's also when they were talking about putting a trach in, which would have been like the beginning of the end.
Wow.
So that was a huge critical point.
I was like gone. Like they had to sedate me with stuff because I was so bad that literally I don't even remember the next several hours.
And what was your lung function at that point?
That was
the
18
or 19%.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, it dropped so bad. So then it became this balance of kind of a dance in between. They were freaking out. Like I was out, but they were asking her, what do we want to do? Transplant or not? Transplant. Like we're like, what is it? So there's like this transplant thing that, because at this point, when you get this bad as a CFer, there's 1 or 2 options. There's one, you go transplant route. And you have to do all the tests and everything like that to get a lung transplant. Now, that doesn't just solve your problems. That's just kind of a Band-Aid to allow you maybe make it a couple more years.
Is that because the CF gene?
No, it's because the lungs are done. They're done.
Lungs just don't transplant.
Lungs are done.
It's not like
Lungs are the hardest organ to transplant.
not like a liver or something.
Even over a heart. A heart is easier to transplant.
Because it's 2 factors. You still have CF, and then you're getting a lung transplant, so you become immune suppressed. You don't have an immune system anymore, and you can always fight infections, which are prevalent for CFers. And so it's like this, 2 bad issues. Yeah. Or the other option was palliative care, where it's, hey, you're just going to die softly. We're going to give you drugs. They'll make you comfortable as you go out. That's really where we're at. So that's why they're like, we're not going to give you stuff. You got to make a decision. If we go transplant, we don't want to ruin everything and give you bad stuff, that's going to harm you even worse. So they literally were having to question her, and she's like freaking out, like, I don't know. And I'm out of it. Like at this point, like I don't even know what's going on.
Meanwhile, everybody, like the doctors, the IMCU doctor, the CF doctor, they're wanting an answer. Like, are you going? Because we're giving him medicines, and we're either giving him medicines that are going to make it worse for a transplant or better for palliative care. And we need to know which direction you're going.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Josh got out of that, and he was able to be transferred back to a room after a couple of days. And then he and I got a chance to start talking and asking questions about what does that mean for palliative care? What does that look like? because Josh was suffering very, very much. There were so many questions with palliative care with, okay, well, those are like life and death decisions. So how much are you going to help somebody pass away? How much are you not helping them? Like, it's too much, at least in my mind, it put too much on me of what decisions I'm making involving Josh's death. And that was very scary. And I didn't want to overstep bounds or take anything into our hands that's in God's hands.
Sure.
And then also talking about transplant, like what does that require? And what kind of comfort measures do you offer at all if we're going to go the transplant route?
Because with transplant, they told us this. You have to be sick enough to need it, strong enough to survive the surgery, and psychologically strong enough to handle the recovery. It's not a guarantee. I could die in the surgery, like with the transplant. It's very possible.
Or waiting for the transplant.
You know, I knew that that was the case. You know, I knew enough about transplant to know that that's could be happening. It's not a, hey, I get this, I'm going to make another 50 years. No, it's literally like you once you get that, you have a certain amount of time that you've got. You know, it's a ticking time bomb because your body's always trying to reject those lungs. It's not natural to have that, right? At that point, it's die comfortably or transplant.
If you've ever struggled to breathe, then you know the panic that runs through your body. Maybe you crawled into the end of a sleeping bag as a kid and freaked out when you couldn't turn around. Or maybe you accidentally inhaled water at a swimming pool in your teens. Or maybe you had an asthma attack as an adult. Hopefully those moments were brief, but they still stick out in your mind. And perhaps you even subconsciously cringe as you remember what that felt like. For Josh, it was going on not just for a few moments, but for days upon end. The entire time that Josh was at the hospital, he was hooked up to an oxygen tank, but his lungs simply weren't working. They couldn't absorb the oxygen anymore. His lung function was too low. This was a dark time for the Glasscocks, but not just because of Josh's physical suffering.
Mentally, I've never been so, like I said, most of my life, positive. You know, grown up, the thought positive, everything. I couldn't keep positive thoughts. I couldn't keep straight thought. I couldn't keep anything. The only thing I could focus on was breathing, and I couldn't do that. So it was the depths that I've never been in my life where I realized this is the end. And I've known CFers, I've seen CFers go out that way, and it's not a pretty sight because you can't breathe. So when you can't breathe and it's like that constant, I had a psychiatrist come and see me in my room. She started talking to me about, she was trying to teach me mindfulness and like breathing exercises to help the situation. And a big pivotal thing was when she was getting me to talk, she was like, go to a place that you would, feel like comfortable, that you really like, picture it, tell me about it. So I'm sitting there talking to her. I'm saying, I'm sitting outside in my backyard and I'm seeing my little girl play and she's chasing a butterfly. As soon as I say that, I start busting out crying. Because I start to think in my mind that I'm not going to be able to be around for her. And my goal, my dream was to walk her down the aisle. And I thought, I might have an option if I do transplant of doing that. And so I've got to do what I can. I've got to go through it. And so we did. And we literally left from there and started going transplant route. They originally told us it was going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get it approved, through all the testing, everything. And I'm thinking in my mind, 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to die. I was in that moment thinking,
you're still in the hospital at this point.
Still in the hospital, they're telling me that, and I'm like, I can't make it that far. Because at that point, it wasn't, I'm thinking what's going to happen tomorrow even. It was like, I can't make it next hour. Because I was such in a deep pit where I couldn't do anything. Because what I had to do is I had, for transplant, to get my body ready for the surgery. So I had to try to exercise, try to walk. I'm on oxygen 24/7. There's one of this test where I have to do it without oxygen. She makes me lay on this table and she's pushing on me and doing different stuff and testing. I don't even remember what the actual test was, but I don't have oxygen on. I can't breathe. It was one of the hardest times there, of one of the hardest tests, where she's putting her probes on me and doing different stuff. And like, I can't breathe. And so I was like, what made it worse, she made me hold my breath. Like, it was a test where I had to breathe all my air out and then have to breathe in and hold it. It was literally like I was just praying that whole time, like, Lord, let me get through this because I cannot, do that. And so finally I was able to get through, but it was a very hard road going transplant because all the testing. And then here's the deal. It was not a guarantee you get approved.
This 2 to 3 week thing that they told us in the hospital, we can boom, 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 get you through on the transplant list. 2 to 3 weeks. We can get all these tests. It took 2 to 3 months.
During this entire time, the Glasscock's daughter, Lily Ray, was 2 years old and was frequently cared for by family and friends. Josh and Amy were constantly driving back and forth between their home in Burnet, Texas, and the hospital in San Antonio, which was 2 hours away. And at times, Josh thought that he wouldn't be able to make it another hour. But now, the wait was indefinite. The situation seemed hopeless. How could God possibly pull them through? More on that after the break. Welcome back to Compelled. Due to the worsening effects that cystic fibrosis was having on his lungs, Josh Glasscock was wheelchair-bound at this point and could no longer take care of many of his daily necessities. He and his wife Amy found themselves constantly driving back and forth between their home in Burnet, Texas, and the hospital in San Antonio, which was 2 hours away. And for Amy, the intensive care was both physically demanding and emotionally draining. The Glasscocks had reached their limit.
Every basic function was like I had to rely on my wife. I was very blessed to be able to have my wife be able to be there for her because she had to do everything. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't keep straight, like regular thoughts. I couldn't do anything. And so it was this like mixed emotions of like, all right, we go in transplant route, but we don't even know if that's a guarantee. And I can't take anything to help me. So it was like that balance of like, I know that like these drugs can help, but like they make it worse and I can't get approved if I take it. And so it was like, are we getting this or are we getting approved or are we not getting approved? And so finally we do get approved after all of this type deal. And so now we're on the list. Now it's the waiting game.
So what does that mean to be on the list?
Okay, so being on the list, you're given a number, you're rated. And based on your number, which there's a committee that has to pick you of doctors and they assign you a number based off of your lung function, your urgency, basically how bad you are.
So if you're number one, you're going to be the first one to get picked.
You're going to be the first one to get called. But it doesn't really work that way because with transplant, everything is based off the donor. Like you can be like worst case scenario, Josh is number one, but the donor that just died, his lungs don't fit him or he's not the right blood type. Or he's got a history of something that Josh would react to.
It literally has to be a perfect fit. Because if it's not, you won't make it very far. You won't make it. You'll die.
Yeah.
You have to find the same blood type, the same size, the same like structure. I mean, there's like multiple calculations and everything, and you get entered on this list. And so now, as soon as you got on the list, you're waiting, but you're in line.
Yeah.
Okay. So there could be people ahead of you or not.
If they get a lung that they decide would be a match for you, they call you and you have to answer your phone and you have to be available to leave your house immediately.
Right away.
Because the organs don't stay fresh.
It's a time.
Are only viable for
4 to 6 hours.
Yeah. You have a very precious window and we have a 2-hour drive to San Antonio.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot has to go into that. So we had bags packed.
Yep.
We had emergency phone numbers. We wanted Lily to go with us because we figured we'd be saying goodbye to Josh and she needs to be there. Even if it's chaotic, like she's got to be there so that Josh can say goodbye. But we also want somebody there to watch her so that if something happens or I can't be there. So we had all kinds of list of people. We also, while we were still in the hospital in Austin, we had organized everything for Josh's funeral. we had gone to the funeral home, we had made arrangements, and we had talked to people. We had written out like what we wanted and talked to people about. So we had planned for pretty much any case scenario. Whether Josh were to die, we wanted everything to be prepared for that so that it wouldn't be stressful on me. And then we had stuff for transplant as well. But we got a call
on September 17th. Mm-hmm. We got a call. The call said, we got lungs for you. Do you want them? I was like, yeah. So, because you can actually say no. You can say no. You know, if like some issue, but they've trained you to literally go, hey.
Take what you can get.
You take what you can get. Okay. So I was on the transplant list for what?
I want to say you were like on it for 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks. It seemed like a long time.
So really, that's not too bad as far as timing.
And that was the first call y'all received. You hadn't missed any others.
Hadn't missed any others or anything like that. So they give you a call, say yes, all right, get here. And so normally they say what happens is you get the call, you'll show up, and you'll have time. Because usually the lungs have to be transported from somewhere else.
They're being like
flown in.
Yeah, something like that. So this wasn't the case. We get there, the lungs are at the hospital. The person that had passed was at the hospital, and now we're on a time. So we were thrown off because we get there, and they're like, boom, boom, they're getting me down. They're starting to, shave me. They're starting to be able to get everything prepped, and we're like, what?
My family's driving from 4 hours away on the coast of Texas. My sister's driving from Oklahoma. Josh's parents are driving from West Texas. Nobody's there yet, and nobody's going to be there. If it's going at this rate, as fast as they were going, nobody's going to make it. Nobody's going to say goodbye to Josh. I honestly thought that he would die on the table, that he would not recover. Even though we're going through all of this for months to get on the transplant list, I was sick to my stomach the whole time, thinking he's going to die on the transplant, but at least he'll die fighting. That was my mentality.
Go down, buddy.
That was Josh's will, and Lily will know he died trying to live for her. So at this time, when we're going through all this and it's being rushed, I'm taking pictures left and right. I'm asking them to take a picture. I'm kissing him so many times I can't even count. And I'm just wanting him to know I love you. Probably said it so many times, just know that I love you, because I didn't think that I would see him again.
Literally, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, great. This is where I'm at. I'm either literally going to wake up in heaven, or it's going to be difficult, a recovery. And then literally it got all the way up to about 10 minutes before we go. And the doctor and surgeon comes out and says, the lungs are no good. Go home.
Unbelievably, after months of preparation and receiving the life or death call that they were hoping and praying for and rushing to the hospital, the pair of donor lungs were defective. Surgical teams test donor lungs 3 times before transplant surgery. They have to move quickly and make fast decisions. And in this scenario, the lungs passed the first 2 tests. But then just moments before Josh's life-changing and potentially life-saving surgery, the lungs ruptured during the 3rd test. They were no good and would have killed Josh instantly when they tried resuscitating him from the surgery. Only by God's mercy did the surgical team discover this in time, with only minutes to spare. But while Josh and Amy were relieved to have that pressure temporarily removed, they also knew that this meant they were starting the emotional roller coaster all over again, waiting for that life-altering call to come at any moment. But while they waited, Josh's condition continued to worsen. Every day, he was having multiple respiratory attacks where he just couldn't breathe.
I remember a story. I was out here on the front porch, sitting there watching Lily Ray play in the pool. And my wife was there with her, and I get an attack. I'm already on my little oxygen machine, 5 liters. I have to go and get my big stationary machine and put it on 5 liters. So I'm maxed out on 2
cannulas,
trying to get as much oxygen I can. And so that was what was happening 4-5 times a day.
A day.
I would say it was twice that.
Well, it got to a height where it was even more. But I literally just get up to go, to the restroom, and I'm winded. I'm gone.
His lungs were so damaged and so frail that coughing would rupture a blood vessel. we were here and Josh is in the room and coughs up blood and is like choking on it, like drowning in it. And I'm thinking in my head, like, well, what if it doesn't stop? Like, he's going to literally drown with blood. So I'm like, I can't drive him to the hospital if he's going to be coughing up blood everywhere. So we did call an ambulance. So all of this stuff and so many respiratory attacks a day. And I can't even tell you how stressful it was. Like, all of that's happening this whole time that we're waiting for a call.
Yes.
So there was no moment of, there was bits and pieces that God gave us of, we're sitting on the couch together and things are fine. Or Josh is laying in bed and Lily's next to him and things are fine. But it was sweet and precious little moments, like minutes of the day that were calm. It was not a good season.
It was my lowest time in my life, But even with that, the Lord was there. He's always been there. He was always giving me levels of peace. And even whenever I couldn't have it, like mentally, like I was at a level where like mentally I had no hope, nothing. Like I couldn't even think of the next day or anything like that. So there was like a dark time, but I don't believe like I like doubted the Lord at any time during that. But I was just like trying to see what he wanted out of this, what was the end goal with it. But so I was just thinking, well, at that time in my life, it was literally, I just got to spend it with my family,
Yeah.
and try to just do different things like that. And so I started kind of, I remember I recorded myself one time, as a video for Lily as she's grown up, and I was trying to think of that, thinking of literally just what can I leave, Lily and Amy that will go for years on.
And so they waited for the call, the moment when there would be an opportunity to receive another set of lungs. And while they waited, they daily clung to the Lord, praying and asking God to spare Josh's life until they could receive that phone call. But God was about to do so much more, which you'll hear about right after the break. Welcome back to Compelled. Josh Glasscock, along with his wife Amy, was awaiting a lung transplant to treat his cystic fibrosis. At this point, Josh's lung function was measured at 18%, meaning that 82% of Josh's lung functionality was shot. His lungs simply couldn't process oxygen. If something didn't happen soon, Josh was going to die. But what they didn't know was that God was already working behind the scenes, doing something they would never have dreamed of.
All growing up, the doctors always told me that there is a drug on the horizon. There's something that's coming. If we can just hold your health, there's something coming. They get up to this point where they've got this new drug that's supposed to be helping a lot more of the mutations. The FDA has literally approved it for people that are really bad off to get this early access. Now, not all clinics went through the red tape to get that approval, but my clinic did. They were like, hey, so you want to try this drug? I'm like, thinking in my mind, yeah, that'd be great years ago when I had good health. But now, it's not going to do much. And so I was like, sure, yeah, go for it. And so what they did is they're like, okay, we'll let you know. Well, on my birthday, September 25th, I get a call from my doctors and they say, hey, we're going to get you the drug in a week. I was like, oh, great. Okay. Well, I'm still waiting on the transplant, not knowing when that's going to be the case. And on Amy's birthday, October 3rd, I get the drug. I take my first dose. And so what they told me is it normally takes 3 months or so to act. I'm thinking, well, I don't have 3 months because I'm on the transplant list. Whoop-de-doo. It's not going to do anything. There's not going to be a drug that's going to be able to impact some damage that I have. Because at that point, I still didn't have like that direct hope. Well, I'm on the drug for about a month. And I noticed something. Like for the first week, really, I noticed increased energy. Like I remember I was at the point where I can't do much. There was a little more energy, a little less attacks on the lung side. A month goes by, and a lot less attacks. And we're like, what? I go in and get a test, and the doctor's like, at that point, this was the dividing moment right at this point. The doctor's like, this point, remember, he told us there's only two places. There's either you go die at home through palliative care or you have the transplant. The first time, he's like, you may want to think about trying this drug out for 3 months.
Like putting
And
yourself on
off
hold
the
from
transplant.
the transplant.
I'm like, what? You at this point have been telling me transplant's the only option. But my doctor has seen all the studies and done all the stuff and have had other patients that this has been a game changer. So he's like, you might want to wait. So I was already feeling a little better, somewhat. But I'm like, okay, hey, transplant, the very unknown, or this is very unknown, but like I keep my lungs with this drug.
Yeah.
So we were praying about it, and I'm like really felt strongly like, okay, I need to
Give this a chance.
I need to give this a chance. Like, okay, so that was like on a Thursday or Friday, something like that. And so I was like, okay, we were praying about it over the weekend. And I was figuring, okay, on Monday, I'm going to tell a transplant team that, I probably just need to be on hold. I was still kind of like weighing it. But then on Saturday night, I get the call.
The transplant call.
Transplant
Call
calls
number
and says,
2.
hey, we got a lung for you. Now I have another parting of the waves. And like I can say no because I can. I was like, I felt overwhelming peace and going, I have to say no. And they're like, what? I mean, they were like kind of ticked off a little bit because they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, I can't. I have to say no.
And just like that, Josh said no to a new set of lungs. The nurse on the other end of the phone didn't spend much more time on the line with Josh. The nurse hung up and called the very next person on the lung transplant list. But Josh turned around and realized what he had done. He had said no to what he had been working towards for months, transplanted lungs. Up until this point in history, lung transplants had been the only option for CF patients to extend their lives by a few more years. And Josh had been on death's door for months in and out of hospitals, receiving breathing treatments on oxygen tanks, and had already made arrangements for his own funeral. But now, Josh wondered if maybe God had opened the door to another lifeline, an experimental drug with life-altering implications.
Little by little, I started improving. Like, I feel better.
You're not using
I'm
oxygen all
not
day
using
long.
oxygen as much. I'm not, being heavily on all the meds as much. To the point in February.
No, by November.
By
Thanksgiving, we visited my family.
Yes.
This is the first vacation from home we've taken in a year because we only leave the house to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But we went down to my parents and Josh went fishing.
Surf fishing.
With no oxygen. And we're looking at this like, you couldn't stand. You couldn't take 2 steps without oxygen.
And I'm out in the surf, fishing for like 3 hours.
Just on Easter, you had been like about to die.
Yes.
And like 6 months
Easter,
later.
basically Thanksgiving, like it was a game changer turnaround.
And that's from October 3rd, first dose.
Yep.
To Thanksgiving. So you're talking like less than 2 months.
February, I go to a doctor's appointment. I do the lung test. And I am at 31 lung function.
Wow.
At that point. I was at, 18, 19 and literally got to the point where like it now has gotten me that level where like I was able to function. I was able to go back to work too.
Wow.
In January. It's, been a big game changer tremendously. Like the Lord, once again, he was there and it was miracle number 3 in our lives in a sense that he literally was like, hey, you say you got 1 or 2 options. I'm giving you a third. It's either die or go home or the transplant, or I can bring a random drug
at the last minute
to do it.
The interesting thing about when they were telling him about this trial drug or this, new drug that had a very small window of people that could take it before it was FDA approved, part of the requirements to be able to take it before it was FDA approved was your lung function had to be below 40% and you had to be working towards a transplant. What if all of that, him having such low lung function and us doing all the stuff with the transplant, was just to get him to be in that special group that could have early access?
Wow.
You know what I mean? What if we had done palliative care? One, I don't think he would have made it because I think that would have been the direction we're going, and you would have probably given up hope. We would have taken, drugs until it messed things up. We probably wouldn't even have made it that far.
Because they didn't open until December anyways for people that weren't in the early access badge.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, so it was something else, like literally a miracle. Once again, God showing off in our lives and going, you know what? I'm going to open up the doors to allow you now to have the hope of being able to walk Lily Ray down the aisle.
Today, Josh has continued to surpass all of the predictions about his life expectancy. Josh no longer has to use a wheelchair, and he can walk anywhere he wishes. Apart from an inhaler, he doesn't even need oxygen during the day. In fact, as we were first creating this podcast episode, Josh and Amy texted me that Josh's lung function was now measuring at 34%. Normally, it's incredible for a CF patient's lung function to remain the same, let alone improve. And the fact that Josh's lung function has almost doubled from his low point of 18% is a miracle. And being a living miracle isn't something that Josh takes for granted. As we wrapped up their story, Josh and Amy wanted to share how they have found opportunities through their journey to share the love of Christ with others.
I've had multiple conversations with nurses, doctors, patients about the Lord. It's opened up the door for that. And I firmly believe that's why God allowed for me to have CF, is because I could be able to speak on those things,
I think it's a huge testimony to suffer well. To be for 14 days in one room, you can't leave your room, you're in isolation, and all these nurses coming in, and to see the scripture and we don't play the television while we're in the hospital. We have a scripture over it from Psalm 101 that says, I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. And we have people that'll make a comment about that, or, wow, your room is so peaceful, or I just love coming in your room. It's so cheerful. And, but just the witness, otherwise Josh and I, we wouldn't have much of a ministry. We did foster care and we have Lily, but other than that, his job is in a Christian environment and he works in an office. It's the hospital 14 days at a time, 6 times out of the year. That's 3 months altogether that we're witnessing over and over. They get to see you over and over again. So it's not a one-time thing. This is over years. So we knew nurses, we had known them for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years. So it's a pretty powerful testimony, I think, especially as a Christian, to show them the difference. And they see other CFers, or they see other patients that, maybe claim to be Christian too, but don't suffer well, or don't use those opportunities to glorify God. We don't always see that suffering is an opportunity to glorify God. Sometimes we just get too focused on the suffering.
What would you guys say to someone listening who has recently been diagnosed with a long-term illness or disease or disability?
My number one thing by far that's helped me is trusting in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. Because there's scripture where it says, trust in the Lord, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Was pivotal for me was you trust in the Lord, and I've seen how he comes through. Okay? But also remember that we are not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know that you can very easily get into that mindset that nothing's going to happen. But that's not what happens. Things can go wrong quickly, fastly, everything, right? But what can stay there and endure is the faith in God. He's always there. He's always going to provide. He's in control of all things too. That's another thing you have to think about. No matter what, he is in control. He is on high. And it's nothing that the devil can do or anybody else can do that's going to be apart from his will.
I would say, from a caregiver perspective, or from the wife's perspective, whether it's your husband that was just diagnosed with something, or a child or something, I think it's important to see a diagnosis like that, especially if it's one that's a terminal diagnosis, or you have 7 months to live, or you have 2 months to live, or this is your what looks so horrible. That is such a mercy from God that God just told you that. God knows the day. It's already been assigned in the book of life. Like, he knows when we're going to die, but we never know that. So for anyone to come to you and say, this is really bad and this is your time frame that you have, that's a mercy from God to give you that insight. Because it would be one thing if I was married to Josh, never knew he was sick, never knew nothing, and one day he goes out and he dies. I didn't have any moment to reflect on how sweet our fellowship was together, our union together. I wasn't able to make special memories with him. But if you're told you have 6 months, or you have 2 weeks, or you have any time, like if anybody gives you any kind of time frame, that is a mercy and a grace from God to treasure that time with your loved one. He didn't have to give you that. He didn't have to tell you anything. And you could have regretted something. But that gives you such an opportunity to live more carefully for Christ, and to love each other more deeply than you probably wouldn't have otherwise. So I think that it would be a blessing to look at that as a mercy from God and a grace that he would give you that insight and that opportunity. And also to know that he can do anything. Like, any diagnosis from man really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change the day that your husband was going to die. He wasn't going to die when he was 80, but now that he has a diagnosis, he's going to die when he's 42. No, God has that day ordained. Nothing changed on God's side from a diagnosis. And then here, Josh and I are like, I was for sure multiple times in our marriage, I'm going to be a widow. I've always thought it from the day we got married. I just always had that mentality. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to die before Josh. But, any kind of diagnosis doesn't determine the outcome. God's already determined the outcome. So we need to be careful how we see diagnosis, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I would also say, Josh said a phrase when we were first married. It was after our first year, and we were first going through some hospitalizations together. And even in that first, he had some back-to-back hospitalizations that were bad. And he had a complication with medicine, and his heart almost stopped, and all kinds of crazy things were going on. And the doctors at the time were like, we don't know what to do for you anymore. And I remember thinking, like, I've just had 1 year of marriage with this, and he's going to die. Like, we've only had 1 year. It was so bad. And I remember Josh saying a phrase, and he still says it today. He says, these are exciting times. And he always says that when they're the worst, where like it looks so dark and depressing and all is lost and I'm going to die or I'm going to be a widow or whatever. He always says these are exciting times. And he says that because no matter how bad things are, God is always on his throne and he's sovereign. So we can look at any kind of situation, any diagnosis, any disaster in our life, and we can say with certainty and with a great measure of faith that these are exciting times because nothing changes according to God. He has it all ordained and he's in control. And that's a very safe place to rest.
I want to thank y'all for coming on to the show and for sharing the story of what God's done in y'all's life. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, it sounds like Josh's story has a happy ending, and by many accounts, it really does. I mean, this is a guy who could have died during any moment of any regular day, whether from rupturing a blood vessel while coughing and drowning in his blood, or running out of oxygen and suffocating to death, or dying on a surgical table during a lung transplant. You name it, it could have happened instantly. And in many ways, it still can. While the drug that Josh is taking has had unbelievably positive effects for Josh, it's still experimental, and it's not a cure. Josh will have to take this drug for the rest of his life. There's simply no knowledge about any long-term side effects from the drug. And because of his lifetime of cystic fibrosis, Josh's lungs could still unexpectedly collapse, or other damaged organs could fail at any moment. Or he could die during an especially bad flu season. When I first interviewed the Glasscocks, the current life expectancy of CF was 37 years. But as of today, in 2025, Josh will be turning 41 and still going strong. I hope that you'll join me in praying for Josh's continued health. But in other ways, perhaps it's a blessing. It's given Josh an incredible testimony to share with others. It's also given him and Amy plenty of time to reflect on life and death and the choice to live their life to the fullest. In Ecclesiastes 9, God reminds us that no man knows his time, even a perfectly healthy person like you or me. We don't know, only God does. May we each live as though our days are numbered, and may we live them for the glory of Him who made us. You can learn more about the Glasscocks and see a bunch of behind-the-scenes photos, including when they were dating, the adoption of their daughter Lily Ray, and from Josh's many hospital visits, all available at compelledpodcast.com and looking for this episode number 39. We'll also include resources that they've recommended for other Christians walking through difficult moments. Also, now that Josh is back in the workforce, he's launched his own business. It's called On The Go Fingerprinting, where he provides fingerprinting solutions for background checks, licensing, and more. And if you own a business and need all of your employees fingerprinted in a day, he'll actually fly out to you and do it right there. And who knows, he might even bring along Amy and Lily Ray for the ride. Learn more at onthegofingerprinting.com. Again, that's onthegofingerprinting.com. And if you know someone who would be encouraged by Josh and Amy's story, please send this to them. It's Compelled episodes number 38 and 39 with Josh and Amy Glasscock. It's our joy to release these stories for free, but that's only possible because of our sponsors and the generous financial support of our listeners like you. Creating stories like these is not cheap. In fact, a single episode can take upwards of 80 hours to produce. If you want to help us continue creating more stories just like the Glasscocks, then consider joining Compelled as a monthly partner. You'll get access to all of our behind-the-scenes interviews with over 100 hours of additional interview content that we never had time to publish. And you'll also get access to all of our brand new episodes 1 week early without ads. There's no set price, it's totally up to you. Just choose the monthly amount that makes sense for you, and by doing that, you're helping us create new episodes of Compelled. To join as a monthly partner or to make a one-time donation, just visit compelledpodcast.com/donate. Today's story was edited by Zach Thaler, Micah Foster, and Mark Weaver. Sound engineering by Sonomorphic, and our associate producer is my marvelous wife, Sarah Hastings. I'm your host, Paul Hastings, and you've been listening to Compelled. We'll be back next time with another compelling story. We'll see you then.